Welcome to OOTO TV, the out of the office investigation into personal health and physiological actualization. I'm Dr. Lena Petrova, and I'm joined by my colleague, Dr. Aris Thorne. Today, we're discussing circadian sleep cycles and their profound effect on our mental and physical health. Aris, this is a topic that feels so familiar, but when you really get into the science, the complexity is it's staggering.
It really is, Lena. We're all obsessed with getting our 8 hours, right? We track it, we talk about it. But this question right here, this is the real heart of the matter. What if the time you go to bed matters even more than how long you're actually asleep? The science is pointing to something huge that we've been overlooking. The timing of our sleep is a powerful lever for our health. It's not just about duration anymore, it's all about rhythm. And we're going to explore that rhythm from every possible angle today. First, we'll start with the body's master clock. Think of it as the conductor of your entire biology. Then, we'll get into what happens when you ignore that conductor, which we're calling the metabolic meltdown. After that, we're taking a journey into the incredible world of your gut's inner rhythm and its shocking link to the brain. Of course, that leads us right into the mental health connection, and then we'll look at the pretty serious long-term health risks. But we'll wrap up on a high note, with real, actionable ways you can reset your internal clock.
So let's start at the beginning. This whole idea of a master clock isn't just a nice way of putting it, Lena. It's a real physical thing in our brain, and it's literally conducting this massive internal orchestra of processes around the clock. And when that conductor is off beat, well, the whole symphony just starts to fall apart.
That's so true, Eris. The name circadian rhythm actually comes from the Latin circa diem, which means about a day. And it's all run by this tiny little cluster of neurons in the brain's hypothalamus called the suprachiasmatic nucleus, or SCN. But here's the part that just blows my mind. The SCN is just the main conductor. Almost every single cell in your body, your liver cells, your heart cells, even your skin, has its own tiny local clock. The SCN's job is to get them all on the same page, mostly using light as its cue, so your whole body is working from the same sheet of music. And it directs that orchestra mainly with these two key hormones. In the morning, when sunlight hits your eyes, it sends a powerful signal to the SCN to pump up cortisol. Now, we usually think of cortisol as just a stress hormone, but in the morning, it's our get up and go signal. It makes us alert and ready for the day. Then, as it gets dark, the SCN tells the pineal gland, okay, time for melatonin, the so-called hormone of darkness, which gets the body ready for sleep. The big problem, of course, is our modern world. All that blue light from our phones and screens, it directly slams the brakes on melatonin production. We're essentially tricking our brains into thinking it's always daytime, and it throws that entire hormonal dance into complete chaos. And that chaos, well, it leads directly to our next section, the metabolic meltdown. And this isn't some far-off abstract issue. The damage to your body's fuel system is immediate, it's measurable. It happens the very same night you decide to stay up late and have that midnight snack.
Exactly. What you're looking at here is a fundamental mismatch. Your body is designed to handle fuel, to handle sugar most efficiently in the morning. That's when your cells are most sensitive to insulin. But what do? We eat a big meal late at night. You're forcing your body to deal with a flood of glucose at the very moment it's supposed to be shutting down for overnight repairs. At the cellular level, your mitochondria, those little power plants in your cells, just aren't ready for it. So the body does the only thing it can. It stores that energy as fat. Over time, that leads to higher blood sugar, weight gain, and, you guessed it, a much higher risk of type 2 diabetes.
Oh, but it gets even worse because your appetite hormones get completely hijacked. You have ghrelin, which is the go hormone that screams, I'm hungry, feed me. And then you have leptin, the stop hormone that says, all right, you're full, you can stop now. When your sleep cycle is out of whack, ghrelin surges and leptin takes a nosedive. So you're hit with this brutal double whammy. You feel starving, and the off switch that tells you when you've had enough is basically broken. This is why late nights almost always lead to raiding the fridge for junk food. Your willpower stands no chance against that kind of biological pressure. Which leads us to a really essential question we have to ask. We're seeing how it messes up our metabolism and our appetite. So, Eris, how can delayed sleep cycles affect our mental and physical health on this fundamental level? It feels like this metabolic chaos is really just the beginning of a much bigger problem.
It absolutely is, Lena. It's the first domino in a long line of them. And to really get it, we need to go deeper than just blood sugar. We need to look inside our gut.
You're listening to OOTO TV with research by author Paul Bulow. This brings us to one of the most exciting areas in all of health research right now, your gut's inner rhythm. We've talked about the master clock in the brain, But it turns out there's this powerful second clock you never even knew you had, and it's driven by the trillions of microbes living inside your digestive system. This is what scientists call the gut circadian axis. It's wild. Those little microbes have their own 24-hour schedule. Some are active during the day helping you digest food, while others work the night shift doing repairs. And their whole schedule is dictated by when you eat and sleep. The research is shocking. Even a 90-minute shift, what they call social jet lag, which is basically just staying up and sleeping in on the weekend, is enough to encourage the growth of bad inflammatory bacteria. This leads to something called gut dysbiosis, and that creates a low-grade inflammation that spreads throughout your entire body, including your brain. And if you're not yet convinced that your gut is a major player in all this, just look at these numbers. They are absolutely staggering. About 95% of your body's serotonin, the neurotransmitter that's key for mood, for feeling good, is made in your gut. And get this, your gut produces about 400 times more melatonin, the sleep hormone we talked about, than the pineal gland in your brain. So think about that. When you mess up your sleep schedule and disrupt your gut, you are literally cutting off the supply chain for the very chemicals your brain needs to be happy and to sleep well. And that is why we have to be crystal clear on this point. Inconsistent circadian sleep cycles disrupts our healthy environment for cellular growth, mental and physical success. We're not just talking about feeling a little groggy. This goes right down to the cellular level. This disruption messes with your body's ability to produce glutathione, which is the master antioxidant protecting your cells from damage. It can even raise your levels of homocysteine, which is linked to all sorts of inflammation. You are essentially eroding the very foundation your body and mind need to function. You know, that direct line you just drew between a disrupted gut and a disrupted brain is the perfect way to get into our next section, the mental health connection. Let's talk about something researchers are calling the mind after midnight effect. This quote here from Dr. Zeitzer at Stanford, it's a bombshell. His team looked at over 70,000 people. Now, they thought they'd find that people struggled when their schedule didn't match their natural tendency, a morning person working a night shift. But that's not what the data showed. What it showed was that the late bedtime itself was the single biggest predictor of depression and anxiety. It didn't matter if you were a so-called night owl. Staying up late was linked to worse mental health across the board, for everyone. And here's the fascinating reason why. During what's called our biological night, those hours when our body is screaming for sleep, our brain changes how it works. The prefrontal cortex, which is like the rational CEO of your brain, it kind of goes offline. Its ability to regulate your emotions, to make good decisions, to stop you from doing something impulsive, it's seriously weakened. This is the mind after midnight effect. It's why we get stuck in those negative thought loops, why we start doom scrolling or make that impulsive online purchase. The brain's brakes are just gone.
And while that's a problem for anyone on a given night, when it becomes a pattern, the consequences can be incredibly severe. That's why we must state this very directly. Delayed circadian sleep cycles can be linked to anxiety, gut dysbiosis, mental illness, psychotic delusion, paranoia, and antisocial personality disorder. And notice gut dysbiosis is right there in the middle of that list. That's no accident. The inflammation sparked in the gut directly fuels the fire in the brain, making all of these conditions worse and creating a vicious cycle that's so hard to escape.
So Lena, that brings up our next big investigative question. Can delayed, shortened, or too long circadian sleep cycles cause harm to our mental health and critical thinking? The evidence seems to be piling up.
The evidence is overwhelming, Aris. It's a resounding absolute yes. When we force our brains to be on when they're biologically programmed to be off for cleaning and repair, we are actively chipping away at our own emotional stability and our ability to think clearly. And the damage isn't just in our heads, it's deeply physical, and it builds up over years. You're listening to OOT-ROTV with research by author Paul Bulow.
Exactly. So up until now, we've focused on the more immediate stuff, metabolism, mood. But what happens when this isn't just an occasional late night, but a chronic way of life? Now let's really zoom out and look at the serious long-term health risks, the chronic toll of living out of sync with your internal clock. This table really lays it all out. A 20 to 32% increased risk for heart disease, that's huge. But let's talk about why. That systemic inflammation we keep mentioning, over years, it literally damages the lining of your blood vessels. Your immune system gets weaker. But the scariest link for me is to cancer. You see, deep sleep is when your body's DNA repair crews are most active, fixing all the little bits of damage that happen every day. When you consistently cut that process short, you're letting more of that damage slip through the cracks. Your body's clock genes are directly tied to your cell division cycle. When they're off, your natural ability to fight off precancerous cells is impaired.
And for women, the impact is especially profound because of the incredibly tight link between the circadian system and the endocrine system. The body's clock helps manage the release of hormones like estrogen and progesterone. When it's misaligned, it can lead to irregular cycles and make PMS so much worse. Also, the hormones that are crucial for maintaining strong bones are released during deep sleep, so a chronic lack of it is a real risk factor for osteoporosis. And during major life transitions like perimenopause or postpartum, a steady body clock is like a vital anchor for mood. Without it, the emotional swings can be much more severe.
Okay, so we know we've just laid out a pretty serious, maybe even scary case against late nights. But here's the really important part, the good news. You are not powerless here. Your clock isn't permanently broken. It is absolutely possible to resynchronize your body and reclaim that natural, healthy rhythm.
And this statement right here is the absolute foundation for how to do it. Understanding and identifying healthy and consistent circadian sleep cycles is critical to our healthy recovery and mental health stability. The most important word in that entire sentence is consistency. Your internal clock does not care that it's the weekend. It thrives on routine, on predictability. The goal isn't just to get more sleep. It's to create a stable rhythm that your entire biology can rely on, day after day. And if you're thinking, okay, where do I even begin? This 10-3-2-1 rule is a fantastic, practical place to start. 10 hours before bed, cut out the caffeine. Its effects last way longer than you think. 3 hours before bed, no more big meals or alcohol, which mess with your digestion and sleep quality. 2 hours out, stop working. Let your brain shift gears. And the biggest one for most of us, 1 hour before bed, no more screens. Turn them off. Give your brain the darkness it's craving to start making that precious melatonin.
And to build on that rule, here are the absolute non-negotiables. There it is again. Number 1, consistency. Waking up at the same time every single day is the most powerful signal you can send your master clock. Combine that with getting 15 minutes of sunlight as soon as you can after waking up. It's like a starting gun for your day. Then in the evening, create a wind-down ritual. And finally, your bedroom environment. Make it a cave, dark and cool. Your body temperature needs to drop to initiate sleep, and darkness is the trigger. You're just giving your ancient biology the signals it already understands.
You know, Aris, all of this really leads to a bigger, more profound idea. Routine sleep theory suggests our body's health is connected to our thoughts, energy, and clarity of alignment of actions, words, and dreams. This really takes sleep out of the category of a simple chore and places it where it belongs, as a cornerstone of a well-lived, fully actualized life. When your physical body is in sync, it creates the essential foundation for mental clarity, for resilience, and for having the energy to actually do the things you want to do.
That's beautifully put, Lena. We've gone from the brain's conductor to metabolic chaos, from the gut's rhythm to the long-term damage. But most importantly, we've also talked about the tools you can use to take back control. So we'll leave everyone listening with one final empowering question. Now that you know your body has a clock, what will you do to set it to the right time?